There are moments in life when silence feels heavier than words, when the absence of response from heaven seems to echo louder than thunder. You pray, you wait, you hope, and yet nothing moves. The doors remain shut, the world carries on, as if your faith were invisible, and those who once believed in you begin to drift away. They whisper that your time has passed, that perhaps you misunderstood your calling, that maybe God has forgotten you. But what they do not understand is that silence is not abandonment. In the economy of God, delay is never denial. The unseen workings of grace are most active in the quietest seasons, and it is often in the shadows of obscurity that God prepares his greatest unveilings. The human heart, frail and longing for recognition, often mistakes hiddenness for rejection. Yet it is within this divine concealment that God shapes destinies, just as the seed must disappear beneath the soil to fulfill its purpose. So too must you endure the burial before the bloom, for what seems forgotten is merely being prepared for revelation. The waiting is not wasted, it is holy preparation, a sacred stillness where faith is refined and identity is anchored in something deeper than applause or outcome. Every unnoticed act of faith, every unseen tear, every quiet prayer whispered in the night, they are being gathered by God, like seeds destined to burst forth in their appointed season. The world may measure success by visibility, but heaven measures it by endurance. Those who thought you were finished did not realize they were watching the setup of a divine surprise. For when God chooses to act, he does not need permission from the crowd. His timing is not swayed by human judgment or worldly order. The same God who called Lazarus forth from the tomb after 4 days of silence still delights in defying every expectation. He waits until the situation appears impossible, until human help has failed, until the watchers have turned away. And then, in a moment, he moves, not to prove the doubters wrong, but to prove his faithfulness right. You see, the forgotten are not forgotten. They are hidden in plain sight, held in the quiet hand of the Almighty, reserved for a moment that will make sense only when the curtain lifts. The world may think you have been set aside, but heaven knows you have been set apart. The furnace of obscurity is the birthplace of true authority. Every pain you've endured, every rejection you've faced, every silent night you've survived, they are the marks of divine craftsmanship. God is not in a hurry because he builds things to last. And while others may rise quickly through human favor, you are being raised through divine process. There is a reason your story has not unfolded according to your timeline. There is a reason others went ahead while you remained waiting. God's timing is not simply about when, it is about who you become in the waiting. He withholds certain blessings not to punish you, but to prepare you, to ensure that when you receive what is promised, you can carry it with wisdom, humility, and strength. The unseen years are the years of molding. The wilderness is not punishment, it is training. The silence of God is not absence, it is intimacy at a level the world cannot recognize. And when the moment of unveiling comes, it will not be subtle. God's restoration is rarely quiet. The same stage that once displayed your rejection will become the platform of your redemption. Those who once dismissed you will stand as witnesses to what heaven was preparing behind the veil. The tables will turn, not by your striving, but by his sovereignty. For the God who writes redemption into the ruins never wastes a broken story. He redeems it so completely that even the scars become testaments of his mercy. Think of how God works, always in paradox, always in reversal. He chose David, the overlooked shepherd, over the celebrated warriors. He lifted Joseph from the prison to the palace in a single day. He called Moses, a stammering fugitive, to speak before kings. And when the world least expected it, he sent salvation not through a throne, but through a manger. The divine pattern has always been to confound human wisdom with heavenly timing. So do not mistake delay for defeat. It is the canvas upon which God paints his most brilliant surprises. There are people who have written you off, quietly confident that your story is over. They have counted you out, assumed that your silence was surrender. But what they do not see is that you are still in God's hands, and He has not spoken His final word. The author of your life is not finished with your chapter, and when He writes again, the narrative will shift. Every closed door, every loss, every heartbreak will suddenly align into a pattern of divine design. What felt like rejection will reveal itself as redirection. The very thing that seemed to delay you will be the thing that defined you. There will come a moment, sudden, unmistakable, when God lifts the veil. The whispers of doubt will fade as His light breaks through the silence. Those who thought you were forgotten will see that you were simply being hidden for such a time as this. The same mouths that once questioned your calling will be the first to proclaim your testimony. God will not just restore what you lost, He will multiply it. The joy, the peace, the purpose, all of it will return in greater measure. And when it does, you will understand why the waiting was necessary. The hand of God is not always seen, but it is always steady. He does not rush because He knows exactly when to reveal what He has prepared. When He moves, everything aligns with precision. The right people, the right timing, the right atmosphere, and suddenly, what was impossible becomes inevitable. You will stand in the place where once you wept, not as a victim of delay, but as proof of divine orchestration. Your life will declare that God never forgets His own, and that even when He seems silent, He is working in ways beyond comprehension. So take heart in the hidden season. Do not despise the quiet years, for they are sacred ground where roots grow deep. Keep walking, even when no one sees. Keep believing, even when nothing moves. For soon, the world will witness what heaven has been building in secret. And when God reveals it, it will not be small. It will be the kind of breakthrough that silences the critics, heals the wounds, and reminds everyone that the forgotten are never forgotten by God. The same hands that formed the stars have been holding your future all along, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal that you were never behind. You were being prepared for divine surprise. There are moments in every believer's life when God's silence feels unbearable, when prayers rise into the heavens and seem to return unanswered, when the stillness of waiting stretches into days, months, or even years. It is in these seasons that faith is truly tested, not by storms or persecution, but by the absence of divine response. To the human heart, silence feels like distance, and distance feels like neglect. Yet in the realm of God, silence is often the language of preparation. The quiet is not empty, it is full of unseen motion. The hidden workings of grace, invisible to human eyes, are carefully arranging what will one day astonish those who doubted. God's silence is not the cold refusal of heaven, it is the patient craftsmanship of a Father shaping something so intricate, so divine, that premature revelation would only diminish its glory. The human tendency is to measure God's presence by the evidence of movement. We assume that if doors are opening, prayers are being answered, and blessings are visible, then God is with us. But when nothing happens, when the heavens seem sealed, we question His nearness. What we forget is that the greatest miracles are not born in the noise of activity, but in the stillness of waiting. When God appears silent, He is not sleeping, he is sculpting. He is preparing a moment where his power will be undeniable, where the fulfillment will not share glory with human effort. In the silence, he refines motives, removes pride, deepens trust, and strengthens the foundation upon which the coming blessing will rest. Consider the seed beneath the soil. For a time, it disappears from sight, buried, lifeless, forgotten. No sound, no sign, no movement. Yet beneath the surface, a transformation is taking place. The silence of the soil is not the death of the seed, but the beginning of life. It is the hidden moment of preparation before emergence. The seed cannot hear the footsteps of the gardener, but the gardener never forgets where he planted it. So it is with God's silence. He buries us not to destroy us, but to grow us, not to forget us, but to bring us forth stronger, rooted, and ready for his glory. When God is silent, the soul learns to listen differently. It begins to hear the whisper behind the stillness, the quiet assurance that presence is not proven by sound. Silence becomes sacred when it is understood as the space where God tests the heart's loyalty. Can you still believe when there is no sign? Can you still worship when there is no answer? Faith matures not in abundance, but in absence. The saints who walked before us all passed through these silent corridors of divine testing. Abraham waited decades for a promised son, his faith held only by the memory of God's voice long past. Joseph languished in prison for years, with no explanation. Yet in that silence, God was aligning kingdoms. Mary carried the mystery of divine conception in her heart, surrounded by misunderstanding. Yet in her quiet obedience, redemption was being woven into history. The silence of God is not the absence of love, but the presence of purpose. He withholds his voice, not to wound, but to strengthen. In the quiet, he teaches us to rely on his nature rather than our emotions, on his promise rather than our perception. It is easy to trust when heaven speaks every morning, but real faith is forged when heaven seems still, and yet the heart believes anyway. Silence separates those who seek God for comfort from those who seek him for communion. It refines the soul into steadfastness, teaching it that God is constant even when he is quiet. Sometimes, God's silence protects us. What we call unanswered prayer is often divine mercy shielding us from what we cannot yet handle. If he spoke too soon, revealed too early, or gave too quickly, the weight of the blessing might crush us. So he waits, not out of neglect, but out of wisdom. The silence becomes a wall around our immaturity, keeping us from stepping into what could destroy us unprepared. It is only when the heart has been tested in stillness that it can bear the noise of fulfillment without pride, without corruption, without forgetting who sustained it through the weight. In the silence, God rearranges things unseen. He is speaking to hearts, moving people, orchestrating events in ways you would never imagine. You cannot see it, you cannot measure it, but it is happening. The silence is not a pause, it is a process. Heaven is aligning the necessary pieces for something that cannot be rushed. And when the time comes, the silence will break suddenly, powerfully, without warning, because God never arrives late. He arrives prepared. Many have mistaken the quietness of God as the conclusion of their calling. They believe the lack of affirmation means they are forgotten. Yet God's silence is not the end. It is the middle. The sacred stretch between promise and fulfillment. It is the proving ground where faith is purified and trust is anchored. Those who endure it emerge unshaken, not because they saw more, but because they learn to believe without seeing. There is a hidden strength that only silence can give, a peace that only comes from standing still when everything inside you screams to move. When God is silent, it is not because he has turned away, It is because he is working on a level beyond comprehension. His silence is strategic, not neglectful. The same God who spoke worlds into existence can speak a single word and change everything, but he chooses silence because he values process as much as outcome. He allows time to pass so that what he builds in you cannot be undone by haste. The silence builds endurance, humility, and depth, qualities that will be required when the noise of success arrives. So if you find yourself in a season where heaven feels closed, do not lose heart. The silence you endure is the sound of preparation. It is heaven working in whispers, forming something eternal within you. Every unanswered prayer, every quiet night, every moment that feels forgotten is being recorded in the mind of God. Nothing escapes his sight. The silence will not last forever, but what it produces will. God's silence is never empty. It is heavy with purpose, filled with unseen grace, and alive with preparation for a moment when all will make sense. It is the hidden rhythm of divine orchestration, the quiet before the unveiling, the sacred pause before the voice that shakes the heavens, speaks again. Hidden seasons are the sacred classrooms of heaven, the places where God trains souls for greatness away from the noise of the crowd. It is in the unseen, uncelebrated corners of life that the heart is molded, the mind sharpened, and the spirit fortified. These are the moments when the applause stops, when recognition fades, and when even those closest to you do not understand what God is doing. The hidden season feels lonely, obscure, and unending, but it is not a mistake. It is a deliberate design of divine preparation, where character is forged stronger than gold and faith is anchored deeper than emotion. The world sees hiddenness as insignificance, but heaven sees it as investment. Before God ever reveals someone to the public, he conceals them in private, shaping them in silence, so that when the unveiling comes, they are not destroyed by the weight of their calling. To be hidden by God is not to be forgotten, but to be protected. It is the grace of delay that keeps you from being seen too soon. The soil must first nurture the seed before it can rise toward the light. A tree that grows overnight cannot survive the storm, but one that develops its roots in darkness can withstand any wind. So it is with those whom God hides. He places them in seasons where nothing seems to move, where progress feels invisible, where the dreams that once burned bright seem distant. Yet within that stillness, something divine is happening. The hidden place is where you learn to depend not on visibility, but on vision, not on results, but on relationship. It is where God teaches you that purpose is not proven by people's approval, but by obedience in private. Hidden seasons strip away false identities. When there is no audience, you discover who you really are. You can no longer perform for validation or pretend for acceptance. The silence forces honesty. It reveals whether your devotion was for God or for the recognition that came with serving him. It tests motives, purifies desires, and burns away pride. Every great man or woman of faith endured such a hidden time. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness before leading a nation. David was anointed king, yet sent back to shepherd sheep. Joseph dreamed of ruling, but was buried in years of obscurity and imprisonment. Even Christ himself spent 30 years in silence before 3 years of ministry. In each case, hiddenness was not punishment but preparation, not delay but development. The hidden season is where God teaches you the rhythm of his voice. When everything external fades, you begin to hear the subtle whispers of his spirit. In the crowd, it is easy to confuse noise for guidance, but in the quiet, his tone becomes distinct. He teaches you to move by conviction, not applause, to walk by faith, not sight. The lessons learned in solitude are the foundations upon which public faithfulness is built. If you cannot obey in silence, you will not stand in noise. God hides you to train you, to strengthen you for what visibility will demand. Many despise the hidden years, longing for their time to be seen, but to rush out of God's timing is to forfeit His protection. Visibility without preparation leads to collapse. The spotlight exposes what the secret place was meant to heal. That is why God covers His chosen ones in secrecy until they are ready. The world may call it delay, but heaven calls it preservation. You are not being overlooked. You are being equipped. The furnace of isolation refines your motives, strengthens your endurance, and gives you the wisdom to handle the weight of influence when it comes. It is in hiddenness that faith learns to survive without evidence. When nothing seems to change, when prayers echo unanswered, when every door appears closed, you begin to understand that faith is not about getting what you want, but trusting who God is. The hidden season destroys shallow belief and builds unshakable trust. You stop needing signs to believe and start believing because of who He has proven Himself to be. You learn to serve faithfully even when no one notices, to give quietly even when no one thanks you, to love deeply even when it is not returned. Hiddenness transforms performance into devotion, teaching the heart to seek God for His presence, not His platform. There are days in the hidden season when discouragement whispers that you are forgotten. It will tell you that others are moving ahead while you remain still. But what looks like stillness to man is structure to God. The hidden work beneath the surface is what ensures that when you rise unshaken. God is not ignoring you. He is building something that cannot be rushed. A foundation must go deep before the structure goes high. The longer the preparation, the greater the purpose. The hidden season teaches patience, humility, and quiet strength. Qualities no success can teach and no failure can steal. Hiddenness is where intimacy with God is born. When no one else sees, when the applause fades, when the encouragements stop, it is there that you find Him most closely. You begin to realize that His nearness was never dependent on circumstances. He walks with you in the silence, speaks in the waiting, comforts in the solitude. The hidden season is the holy ground where relationship replaces religion. You stop chasing results and start seeking Him. And in that seeking, you are transformed. The desires that once drove you begin to shift. You no longer crave recognition. You crave righteousness. You no longer hunger for validation. You hunger for His voice. Hidden seasons are also seasons of pruning. God removes what cannot go with you into the next stage. It may be relationships, habits, but every pruning is preparation. He cuts not to harm but to make room for new fruit. The process is painful, but necessary. A vine must be pruned to grow stronger. Likewise, God's hidden work often feels like loss, but it is the making of strength. You may feel emptied, but you are being purified for purpose. When God hides you, He is not hiding you from destiny, but for destiny. The same hands that cover you in silence are shaping you for significance. He is crafting a vessel strong enough to carry His glory without breaking. Every unseen moment is a stroke of divine artistry, every delay a brush of eternal precision. The world may not see it, but heaven watches every step, every struggle, every tear. Nothing is wasted in hiddenness. It is the womb of greatness, the birthplace of true purpose. When the time comes, and God chooses to reveal what He has built, it will not be partial. The unveiling will be complete, perfect, and undeniable. But until then, the hidden season remains a sacred sanctuary. It is not your prison, it is your proving ground. The stillness is not punishment, it is preparation. You are not being kept from your purpose, you are being kept for it. Hiddenness is heaven's greatest gift to the soul that will one day carry visible glory, for what God prepares in secret will last beyond what is seen. Delay is one of the hardest tests of faith, because it challenges both the heart and the mind. When the answer does not come, when the promise seems suspended in time, when the path forward remains obscured, the natural response is to assume something has gone wrong. Yet in God's design, delay is never denial. It is the interval between intention and manifestation, the sacred pause in which the unseen becomes possible. To the impatient heart, delay feels like punishment. To the discerning spirit, it is preparation. God's timing is not human timing, because his purpose reaches beyond the moment. He withholds not because he forgets, but because he foresees. He sees the full arc of your story, the dangers you cannot perceive, the weaknesses still forming, the strength yet to mature, and in his mercy, he waits. When God delays, he is aligning not just the event, but everything around it. A delay in your life may be the positioning of another person, the movement of circumstances, or the opening of opportunities that do not yet exist. We see delay as stillness, but heaven sees it as orchestration. The tapestry of purpose is vast, and each thread must intertwine at the right time. To rush the process would unravel the design. God's delays are not idle pauses. They are precise calculations of divine order. Every second is intentional, every silence purposeful, every waiting period sacred. He delays so that when his promise manifests, it fits perfectly within his eternal symmetry. Human nature craves immediacy. The heart wants to see, to touch, to measure progress. Yet faith is built in the invisible. When God delays, he invites us to trust his character instead of our calendar. He asks whether we love the promise more than the promiser, whether our obedience depends on outcomes or on relationship. Delay exposes the depth of our faith. It peels away the surface belief that thrives on signs and reveals whether our confidence rests on who he is or on what he does. True faith is not proven when everything comes quickly. It is proven when nothing moves, and yet the soul still says, I trust you. In the hidden patience of delay, God shapes endurance. Waiting seasons refine the heart like fire refines gold. Impatience burns away, pride dissolves, and humility takes root. Those who have learned to wait do not crumble under the weight of blessing when it comes. They understand timing, value, and restraint. They no longer chase fulfillment. They carry peace. The delay is God's way of forming within you the capacity to sustain what he will eventually give. For many can receive a blessing, but few can hold it. The difference lies in preparation, and preparation happens in the waiting. Delay also reveals motives. When God withholds, what remains in your heart becomes visible. If your faith was built on reward, it will fade. If it was built on love, it will deepen. Delay asks, do you still worship when nothing changes? Do you still believe when everything says otherwise? These questions are not to shame, but to purify. In the refining fire of waiting, faith matures from expectation into trust, from hope into surrender. You begin to understand that the delay is not God saying, no, but God saying, not yet. He delays because he loves too deeply to allow you to settle for something less than his best. Every story of divine fulfillment carries a season of waiting. Abraham waited for his promised son until his body was old and his faith weary. Joseph waited in chains for years before his dream became reality. David waited through betrayal, caves, and conflict before sitting on the throne. Even the Son of God waited 30 years before stepping into ministry. Delay is not a sign of disfavor, it is the pattern of divine preparation. Those who have been chosen for greater purpose are always trained through greater waiting. Heaven takes its time because eternal things are never rushed. In the delay, God works both on you and around you. While you wait for the promise is also being prepared for you. The people you will meet, the opportunities you will step into, the lessons you will need, all are being aligned in perfect sequence. The delay ensures synchronization. If the answer came too soon, you might not be ready to carry it. If too late, you might have grown bitter. But when God acts, it will be in the fullness of time. Not early, not late, but perfect. He is not bound by the clock. He is bound by completion. Often the delay is not about the destination, but the transformation. What God does in you while you wait is more important than what you're waiting for. Waiting builds weight, the kind of spiritual substance that cannot be manufactured through comfort. When you emerge from the delay, you carry depth, perspective, and gratitude that those who rushed ahead will never know. You begin to see that God's timing was never a barrier, but a blessing. The delay saved you from wrong doors, from shallow victories, from fleeting rewards. What felt like loss was preservation. There is beauty in divine timing. When God finally acts, it will not require effort or struggle. The doors that refuse to open before will swing wide with ease. The opportunities that once seemed impossible will align naturally. You will realize that the delay was not wasted. It was essential. Every closed door was protection, every detour instruction, every pause preparation. What once felt like divine silence will reveal itself as strategic patience. But the heart must learn to rest in this truth. The longer the delay, the greater the temptation to doubt. In those moments, remind yourself that waiting is not the absence of progress. Even when you cannot see it, things are shifting. The unseen hand of God moves quietly, aligning the pieces of your destiny. You are not being forgotten. You are being refined. You are not being left behind. You are being strengthened. God's silence is not neglect. It is craftsmanship. He is creating something that will not crumble under pressure. Those who understand divine timing learn to live without panic. They do not compare their pace with others, for they know that every path unfolds uniquely. Comparison is the thief of peace, and delay often exposes where we have measured ourselves against another's timeline. But heaven's clocks run differently. What takes a lifetime for one may take a moment for another, because purpose is not standardized. The same God who parted the sea for Moses led Joseph through years of confinement. The methods differ, but the outcome is always perfect. So when the promise feels distant, do not mistake the delay for denial. Continue to walk faithfully, pray quietly, and trust deeply. The silence of God does not mean he is absent. It means he is near in a way that does not yet need words. Every second of waiting is filled with his intentional care. Every sigh, every prayer, every tear is seen and stored. The delay is not your enemy, it is your teacher. It teaches surrender, dependence, and peace that passes understanding. And when the appointed time comes, the pieces that once seemed scattered will fit effortlessly together. The delay will prove to have been a bridge, not a barrier. You will see how every pause was preparing you for permanence, how every disappointment was leading you toward destiny, how every unanswered prayer was gathering strength for the perfect answer. God's delay was never denial. It was his way of making sure that, when his promise arrives, it will not simply visit. It will remain. There are times when life seems to pass you by, when others are celebrated, promoted, and seen, while you remain in the background, unnoticed and unacknowledged. You watch doors open for people who seem less prepared, less faithful, less deserving, and a quiet ache begins to grow inside. You wonder if perhaps you missed your chance, if God has somehow overlooked your faithfulness. But what the eyes perceive as being overlooked is often heaven's act of positioning. The overlooked are not abandoned. They are being placed with precision for an unveiling that cannot be mistaken for coincidence. When God sets you apart, He also sets you aside, because the preparation of destiny requires separation from distraction. The divine pattern has always been that those chosen for something significant must first endure seasons where they are unseen, misunderstood, and underestimated, for hiddenness refines what recognition could destroy. Being overlooked is a strange kind of grace. It spares you from premature exposure, from applause that inflates the ego before character is built to sustain it. Many crave visibility, but visibility without maturity is a snare. God allows the spotlight to bypass you so that you may grow without interference, to mature without performance, to learn His voice without competition from the noise of praise. The delay in recognition is not rejection, but protection. The eyes of men may not see you, but the eyes of God never look away. Every unseen act of obedience, every silent choice of integrity, every prayer whispered in private, all are recorded in the memory of heaven. The unseen life is not wasted. It is the foundation upon which visible destiny will stand. Those who are overlooked by men are often handpicked by God. The pattern echoes through scripture and history alike. David was left in the fields, tending sheep, forgotten even by his own father when the prophet came to anoint a king. Yet God knew exactly where he was. The same God who saw him in obscurity also called him forth in perfect time. Joseph was betrayed, sold, imprisoned, and ignored. Yet the prison was the very place where his gift was refined and his purpose confirmed. Esther was an orphan, unnoticed and unseen, until the moment heaven required her voice. God's way is always to take the one the world overlooks and raise them at a time that magnifies His sovereignty, not their striving. To be overlooked is to be trained in humility. It teaches you to serve without reward, to give without recognition, to love without being seen. It purifies motives. You learn to do good because it is right, not because it is rewarded. You learn to serve because you love God, not because you seek validation. The furnace of obscurity burns away the desire for approval until your heart beats solely for the pleasure of your Maker. When your worth is no longer dependent on acknowledgement, you become unshakable. The approval of men can be taken away, but identity anchored in God cannot be moved. When God positions you through obscurity, He is also testing how you will respond to the success of others. Can you rejoice when someone else receives what you prayed for? Can you bless what you do not yet hold? The ability to celebrate others while waiting for your turn is the mark of maturity. Heaven observes how you handle another person's harvest, for it reveals how you will steward your own. If jealousy or bitterness takes root, it means the heart is not yet ready. But if gratitude remains, if faith persists, if joy endures, then God knows He can trust you with more. Being overlooked becomes a sacred training ground where the soul learns to rejoice in the goodness of God, even when it seems delayed in its own life. God's positioning is often misunderstood because it looks like delay. But positioning is preparation for impact. When God sets you apart, He is arranging the details of your calling so that when the time comes, everything aligns. You are not being ignored. You are being prepared to fit perfectly into a divine sequence. Timing is part of destiny. Arriving early can ruin what was meant to last, and God's wisdom ensures that you arrive exactly when the world needs what He placed within you. The place you now occupy may feel small, unnoticed, even confining, but it is a holy place. It is the space where God hides those he intends to reveal. Every divine unveiling comes after divine concealment. The world saw David's victory over Goliath, but it did not see the years he spent fighting lions and bears in silence. The crowd witnessed Joseph interpreting Pharaoh's dream, but not the long nights of confusion in the prison cell. The disciples saw Christ's miracles, but not the decades of quiet labor in Nazareth. God's greatest works are first hidden, because hidden things grow in strength. What is rooted deeply in private cannot be easily shaken in public. The time you spend in obscurity is the time heaven spends securing your foundation. To those who feel forgotten, understand that being overlooked by people is often a sign of being preserved by God. When doors refuse to open, it may be because the stage is not yet ready for your arrival. When opportunities pass you by, it may be because they are too small for what God intends to do through you. What looks like a closed door may actually be a divine redirection toward something greater. God's positioning always involves precision. He knows not only where you belong, but when. The hand that shaped galaxies does not misplace those he loves. The overlooked are often misunderstood because their journey does not follow conventional paths. They walk quietly, unseen, carrying visions that seem too large for their circumstances. They serve faithfully in the shadows while their hearts burn with unseen fire. Others may question why nothing seems to happen for them, unaware that heaven is taking its time to build something eternal. When the unveiling comes, it will not be subtle or small. It will be a sudden unfolding that makes sense of every hidden year, every unnoticed act of faith, every tear shed in silence. Those who once dismissed you will stand as witnesses to what God was preparing all along. Until then, the hidden season must be embraced, not resisted. To resist it is to fight against the very process that ensures your stability. To embrace it is to rest in the knowledge that the same God who called you is the one who will reveal you. There is no need to force your way into sight when the one who sees all is arranging your unveiling. Every time you are overlooked, you are being reminded that your recognition does not depend on man's awareness, but on God's appointment. When he decides to reveal you, no one can prevent it, and when he chooses to keep you hidden, no one can expose you before time. Being positioned for divine unveiling means learning to find peace in anonymity. It is realizing that influence is not measured by audience size, but by obedience level. It is knowing that God's favor often looks like being hidden while others shine. He hides you not because you are unworthy, but because you are valuable. He keeps you out of sight because what he has placed in you is still growing, still maturing, still being refined. The hidden process protects the sacred gift from premature exposure. You are not behind, you are being built. You are not forgotten, you are being fashioned. And when the time arrives, the unveiling will carry weight. It will not be the shallow kind of recognition that fades with applause, but the enduring kind that carries purpose. The same people who once questioned your worth will see the wisdom of God's delay. Every season of obscurity will reveal its meaning in a single moment of divine clarity. You will not have to prove yourself. God will do the proving through you. For the one who was overlooked will become the one appointed, not by the will of man, but by the timing of heaven.